and welcome back to another edition of Come Back Stronger. I'm Dana Brooks of Fasig Brooks, and I'm joined today by my law partner, Kimmy Hogan.
Hey, thanks.
Welcome back. It was good to have you on this side of the camera like you were last week. We had a show last week that we started, and it was not enough. One show was not enough to cover Jevon McCormick's story. Catch us up on what we missed last week, and then we'll talk about the segments we're going to see today.
Absolutely. So Jevon McCormick is now the CEO of a company called Scribe Media out in Texas, but his beginnings were rough. He was raised by his mom primarily. His dad was a drug dealer and a pimp who had 23 other kids. He dealt with poverty. He dealt with being alone, having to help raise his half-brothers and sisters, and ending up in a juvenile detention facility several times. Yeah. And so he kind of had a moment where he realized, I need to change my life around. And then now today, y'all are going to get to hear the story of how he turned his life around, and still some struggles that he had, but ultimately how he has come back stronger, and now how he's given back to other kids who were in that same situation.
Yeah, because he's a young man by my standards. Yeah. He's only 49, but my goodness, when you look at, I guess the mileage on him is how you might put that in an indelicate way. But you know, he had so many opportunities to fail big and stay down and actually end up just a permanent resident of a correctional institution. He was really headed that way, and no one would have seen his trajectory and been surprised by that, given the really rotten set of facts he was born into, and the adults in his life, how they just continued to let him down, let him and his siblings down. But we'll see this in this next segment. This is what I like about it. He just somehow develops a work ethic. I don't know how. It wasn't modeled for him, but he has a pretty interesting work history. You know, and maybe it's the humility he gained in the juvenile detention center. But he started out, and no job was too, you know, he wasn't too good for a job. He wanted any opportunity he could to prove himself. And much like Jimmy Fasig talks about in his Come Back Stronger book, and he's talked about on the episode we had featuring him, I don't care what the job was. He was going to do it as good as he could. It was an opportunity to make himself indispensable and invaluable to somebody, and that's how you get recognized and start moving up the ladder. So
I love it. And you're going to hear just in a minute how he talks about he started cleaning toilets, and he said, well, if I'm going to have to clean toilets, I'm going to be the best toilet cleaner there is. And that got recognized throughout his life, and it allowed him to keep advancing quickly. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, employers, we want somebody, an honest person with a great work ethic.
That's right.
I mean, what else can you ask for?
That's right. And you can do so much with that person. You can teach them anything. You can, they can take on anything. They can go as far as they want to go because they've got the core, you know, good, strong work ethic. So I'm really excited for him to talk about his trajectory, because it wasn't an easy path. He didn't just get one break and then he was set. He had another setback, but he kept going, and he kept coming back, and each time he came back a little bit stronger. So we'll hear more from him right after this break.
And you know what the insurance company offered him? $5,000. Really? He's completely blind, and they offer him $5,000. Yeah. Ask him to sign a release.
To a lot of people, especially when they're hurting and when they're down and when they're vulnerable, $5,000 is a life-changing amount of money. Yeah. And they're not looking at the value of what has been lost. They're not looking at what it would take to make that person whole, which is our job. Yeah. That's our job. Their job isn't. Their job is to save the insurance company money. Right. And they look at this person and they go, I bet $5,000 would get your full attention. Right. And they come in and they dangle it with a settlement release, and then once you sign it, you're done. You can't come back to us and ask us to wave a magic wand and make that go away. That can't go away.
My client didn't accept the $5,000. We took him all the way to trial. We got a $5 million verdict.
And we're back. This next segment, when Jevon gets into his work ethic and his work history, he got kind of caught up with what a lot of people did in the 2008 mortgage, you know, well, it ended up being obviously a crisis and bringing pretty much the world economy to its knees there for a while, but he got caught up in that, and then he talks quite honestly about how he wasn't always such a good guy. So let's take a look.
So, Jevon, welcome back. I want to hear about your education after juvie, and you got a GED, and you started your kind of career at the bottom of the barrel. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I was finally reunited with my mother at the age of 15, and I moved to San Antonio, Texas. And this was so funny. My mom takes me to school to enroll. I'm supposed to be a sophomore in high school. And so my mother has me tested, and I'm testing on the 5th and 6th grade level. Needless to say, graduation rolls around. I don't have the credits. I don't get to graduate. I don't walk the stage, and I had to go to summer school to get my GED.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what was your first job?
When I was a kid, follow me here, when I was a kid, my mother and I were so poor, we used to always joke that we're so poor we can't afford the O and the R. We're just po. and so the first place that I go to put in an application is a restaurant called Po Folks.
I remember that place.
And so I went in, put in my application. They asked when I could start. I said, right now. They said,
pretty ironic, isn't it?
Totally. All the Walmart, Target, McDonald's, anywhere. Po Folks.
Wow.
So I start the next day, 9 a.m. My role was to clean the toilets from the night before, and I was a busboy. And I remember standing in front of those toilets one day, probably been in my job 2 months, and I remember just thinking, this sucks. Mm-hmm. But I remember what my dad had said when I was a kid. He had looked at me and a couple of my half-brothers and sisters, and he said, no matter what you do in life, be the best at it. So I remember looking at the toilets in the restaurant, and I said to myself, okay, I'm going to have the cleanest toilets in San Antonio. I'm going to have the cleanest toilets in Texas. And so at that point, everything I did, I just said, okay, I'm going to be the best at it.
You're going to work your butt off. Work my butt off.
Yeah. Because all I had was work ethic. I had no high school diploma. I had no college degree. But I knew I could control how hard I work. And so that's what I did. And then my jump into corporate America, my mom was working at an insurance company, and they had an opening, and she told me to apply, and it was in the mail room. I was the mail boy, and I was a filer, lowest of the low jobs. And I got the job. I'm walking down the hallway one day, and I see a sign that says free lunch and learn 401k. So I was like, okay, go into that. And so I keep walking with my little cart, and a lady's walking by. And I go, excuse me, ma'am, where's conference room 401k? I had no clue what a 401k was.
That's a great story.
So I go to the free lunch and learn.
Yeah.
And heard the two greatest words in the history of mankind, compound interest. I was hooked on stock investing, and I consumed myself on learning the stock market, how to turn $100 into two into 1,000, so on and so forth.
So you're a brilliant person, great work ethic, and then you kind of parlayed that into starting in corporate America and getting into the mortgage industry?
No, at first, so I went from insurance, and I wanted to make extra money for investing. So I used to personal train on the weekends. I used to I used to personal train people, and I got into payday loans. I did that for 3 years. Hell of an opportunity. I to this day, it's really one of the stepping stones that helped me understand finance, business, hiring, all the things that go on. I was 23, and I applied for a loan processor job in the mortgage industry. I learned how to be a loan processor. I learned how to be a loan officer. And I saw a lady come in one day. She was an account executive, and her role was to pick up loans and take them back over to the lender. And I asked what she did. She told me, I said, well, are you all hiring? I've never been afraid to ask questions.
Right.
And so she said, yes, in fact, we are. I went over, it was Countrywide Home Loans.
Oh.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. Oh.
They got hit hard during the mortgage crisis,
they got hit really hard.
So you worked your way up to the top, pretty much, right?
Yeah, and then in 2007, 2008, the credit crisis, I went broke.
But you were making a ton of money.
But I was making a lot of money, had a lot of money to invest, but lost Everything. I make the joke, I was negative broke. I had to borrow money from my best friend and to pay my rent. I had to borrow money from my stepdad. I used part of it to survive, part of it to get back into the stock market. And
So what I'm learning about you is, you've got this incredible survival instinct and this incredible work ethic, and you're just not scared to put yourself out there and say, I'm gonna learn. I can do it, I'm smart enough, teach me, and just take the ball and run with it.
That's it.
And I think that's a great moral of the story for people listening to this, is that you can do it. Just apply yourself, ask questions, and put yourself out there.
Ask questions. Think of it this way. The worst thing someone can tell you is no. That's it. But what if they say yes?
Right. So it sounds like you had a second downfall. So, your childhood was obviously very, very, very hard. And then you climbed out of that, made something of yourself in the mortgage industry, and then fell again.
Fell hard.
Yeah. So how did you, you just keep picking yourself back up though. What do you say to yourself when you fall like that as an adult?
Again,
instead of just saying the easy thing like, you know what, it's over, I'm done.
Oh no, it's never over. It's never over. It's not over until I'm being buried, and then it's or cremated, whatever they do with me. Then it's over. But until then, no. We're full blown going all out.
So what's the motivation? What's your mantra? What do you say? Where do you find it?
I'm truly happy to be alive. I get to do this each day. Go back to 2007, what you were saying. The biggest part was, okay, you had made a lot of money and now it's gone. You've proven that you can do that. But the hard part where I had to look at myself, my character was horrible.
Really?
Horrible. I could not hold a relationship. I did not know how to treat women. I was a monster. A monster. Dude. Yeah. I didn't have an example of a healthy relationship.
And human emotion, really.
The money part really didn't bother me. It sucked, don't get me wrong, but I had been broke.
Yeah, you were used to it.
Yeah,
right?
I knew what it was like to survive. Now, I didn't want to come back and see broke again, but there I was. Hey, broke, how you doing? Good to see you again. Didn't think I'd be back, but here I am. But I was okay. I was familiar with it. I knew how to survive. I did not know how to have a good character or be a good man, if you will. So
I'm really surprised to hear that. So when we come back, I want to talk about how you taught yourself that, or where you learned that from, and then kind of go over where you are today.
Wow, that's fascinating. For all the horrible things his father did, what his vocation was exploiting people and their weaknesses and using other people to make money off of them. But I guess he impressed upon his son that he was going to be the best pimp and drug dealer out there, and somehow that was the one little nugget this man was able to pass down to his son. I guess it's a better something than nothing, but he sure didn't teach him any character, and despite his mother probably loving him so much, she can't teach him what it is to be a man, I don't think. So we'll see more about that when we come back right after this. She contacted me almost in a fugue. She couldn't believe that it happened. And something told her, this is not right.
She had lost her daughter.
This is not right. My little girl should be here, and I'm going to do something about it. She contacted me, and I went to see her, I think that day. And we sat at her dining room table, and she showed me the program from the funeral. And I met her sons and saw her gravesite, and I just told her, I don't know what happened, but I'm going to find out, and we're going to do something about it. And she and I bonded right then, and she's been in my life ever since. And seeing how she has used something that is an unimaginable loss and found some way to live a better life and make a better life for her son. There's nothing better. We're back. We're going to get into this last segment with Jevon McCormick, and this is when he tells you how he, one more time, pulls himself up, comes back stronger, one more time yet again. Take a look.
So how did you teach yourself to have good character and be emotionally available and healthy for relationships?
So more mistakes. and a big part was too, I realized I didn't want anyone to know who I was. See, I didn't want you to know that my dad was a pimp with 23 kids, and my mom was an orphan. Oh, by the way, I don't know where my last name comes from, or my last name comes from. So I didn't want you to know any of that. So what I realized is in all these relationships, no one actually ever really knew me.
So did you find that once you opened up about that stuff and became vulnerable, then that allowed people to know you, and that's what made you kind of more emotionally healthy?
My wife, so we've been married 9 years now. My wife is the first relationship of someone who actually knows all the intimate details of my background. And I don't find it to be a coincidence that this relationship is the healthiest relationship I have, because I opened up and I was honest.
And she accepts you for who you
Yes.
are. That's awesome.
Yes.
How did you go as an adult? Now, the mortgage crisis happens. You're at rock bottom again, no income, no place to live. How did you climb out of that?
So obviously I'm hungry and I need money. I need a job. So I got a job selling HR benefits, payroll, things of that nature. And I called on a gentleman for 17 months to sell him the service. And after 17 months, he said yes. 30 days after he signed on to the service, he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, you should come work for me." I said, "You own a software company. I'm in my late 30s. I'm like, that's a young person's game." And he said, "Yeah, but you know how to sell and you know how to follow up." They had never had a big sales force or anything. So I was employee number 13 at the company. 2.5 years later, I became the president of the software company. And
that's amazing.
We grew that company from 13 people in that storage closet. We grew that company to well over 100 people, and we ended up having offices in Austin, Houston, Dallas, and Monterrey, Mexico.
Wow.
I've never been afraid to go 6 to 6 and do whatever needed to be done to succeed. And I was surrounded by a great group of talented people, so that always helps as well. But how I got to Scribe now,
What is Scribe first?
So Scribe, we help authors write, publish, and market their books.
Okay.
So we're a 6-year-old company. We've worked with over 1,800 authors, and we help those individuals put their stories in books.
And so you're the CEO of Scribe?
Yes.
But yet you have a GED. So you're working with all these authors.
Yes.
And no English degree, no advanced degree, anything like that?
No.
That's fascinating.
So I was president of a software company, can't code.
Right.
And I'm the CEO of a publishing company, can't tell you an adverb from an adjective.
But again, that's just amazing. It really shows you the value of hard work, being personable, putting yourself out there, and just being a go-getter, no matter what.
Yeah.
Don't believe the worst in yourself. Believe the best in yourself.
I always look at what can be, especially if I've seen someone else that's done it. I will ask myself, well, okay, why can't I do it? I can do it then. Okay, if somebody else did it. When I was at the software company, I wanted to write my book for my kids. I wanted to leave a legacy piece so they knew that story of how I got here, and I wanted to leave them lessons on character, work ethic. When things get hard, what do you do? And I that's the whole initiative for doing my book. Never wanted my book to be public, never, but do a lot of conversations, encouragement, support. They said, "Oh, you got to make this book public." I delayed it 3 months because I was so nervous to make it public.
It's like a personal diary, right?
Yeah.
What's the name of your book?
I Got There: How a Mixed Race Kid Overcame Racism, Poverty, and Abuse to Achieve the American Dream.
And that was published by Scribe?
Yeah.
So that's how you got hooked up with
So
Scribe?
I got here, yeah.
What do you do now to give back?
Oh gosh, I am big on mentoring youth. So here's the thing, where I came from, there were only 3 avenues out of the hood: rapper, athlete, drug dealer. No one told me that you could be an executive. No one told me you could be an entrepreneur. I didn't know what a barista was until I was in my 30s. So how can you aspire to be something when you don't even know
That
what
it
exists?
exists, right?
That became very important to me. to be able to give back to those kids. And I started with high-risk youth, kids that were transitioning from the juvenile prison system to the halfway house back into society. I went in and I remember speaking with the executive director, and I asked him, I said, okay, what do these boys need? And he said, jobs. I said, why don't they have them? He goes, I don't know. And so I go over to the boys and I said, hey, how you doing? My name's Mr. McCormick, whatever. And of course, they're looking at me. They're all 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old boys, and they're looking at me like, yeah, whatever. And I said, okay, we're going to role play. Say, who in here knows what role play is? No one raises their hand. I said, okay, guys, look, here's the deal. My dad was a pimp and drug dealer, okay? My dad had 23 kids, and I just started going through my background. Told them I was in juvenile 3 different times. And the looks went from this to, oh.
They related.
He's one of us.
Yeah.
So we started role playing, and what I found quickly, I said, most of you are going to go get your first job at a place like Burger King, McDonald's, fast food. And they're like, yeah. I said, okay, when you walk in, what are you going to say? Let me hear you. And the one boy goes, y'all hiring? And I said, not you. And he goes, why not? I go, no one wants to hire that. I go, now, if you walk in, you're going to say, excuse me, sir, do you have any employment opportunities? I said, you're probably going to have a job before you leave. And he was like, why? Because no one's saying that when they go in.
It's how you present yourself.
How you present yourself. After about 4 weeks, all but one of those boys had a job.
That's amazing.
And I remember when the boys would say, Mr. McCormick, I got a 10-cent raise. I got more hours. But they were proud. They had accomplished something. I knew what it was like to feel like you accomplished something and that someone actually cared.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been absolutely amazing. I just feel like you've made me a better person by being here.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, what a phenomenal interview. So much to talk about whenever we come back after the break, but it's amazing how old he was before he finally tackled and got a hold of what shame was doing to him in his life and how shame was informing his choices and what he thought about himself and his value. And then again, that tremendous work ethic. But what I like about him is you can tell he's a natural sales guy because he seems to read the room very well. Yes. He seems to be saying, what is missing? What are people looking for? How do I distinguish myself from that person? And how do I get my foot in the door when I don't have the advantages they all have? So, yeah, I'm excited to wrap up after that. We'll be right back.
It's also important to have lawyers who understand the juries.
100%.
So where you grow up in a place and you understand what makes people from that place proud. Mm-hmm. And in the Panhandle, what is that? Well, we have the world's widest sand beaches, the beautiful nature of the place, but also the strong connection to the armed forces.
Yes. It's important to hire a lawyer who understands the culture of where you're going to be and has an idea of the kind of people who will be on the jury should you have to try the case. And you better believe the insurance companies who will be deciding the value of the case, they look into that. And they want to know, are you a, big city lawyer coming over here? Are you coming up from South Florida? Are you one of those people? And it affects how your case goes. It affects the cooperation you get from the people you have to negotiate and work with to move these things through the court system. And it affects the general outcome. Welcome back. Kimmy, you've watched all 4 segments now. What are your thoughts on this last wrap up and Jevon McCormick altogether? What do you think?
Yes, I love him. I love his story, love his energy. This last segment especially, he talks about his new book, I Got There. And he got there and he turned around and he looked back and he said, who do I need to pull back up with me? And so now he's giving back to the at-risk youth. And I just love how he talks about these very simple things, just the first thing you say when you meet somebody, when you come in for a job interview. These kids haven't had that example. No. And so just like he said, hey, y'all, you hiring? Yeah. And the kid goes, well, what's wrong with that?
Why wouldn't he say that?
Exactly. And so for him to be able to recognize and connect and give back, I love it.
Yeah, and he's going to have credibility where other people don't. He could literally say, I have been in a juvenile detention center. I have gotten, the short end of the stick on the parent draw. at least with one of them. And I've had every challenge known to man. But one thing I like about him is he never gave up. Whatever it was, if somebody was trying to put a boot on his neck, somebody was trying to keep him down, say you don't belong here, you don't have the credential for it. He found out what people did value. And you ever meet people in sales? They always have this thing, I don't care what they're selling. They have a way to read people. They know how to read the room. They need to know how to get you what it is you need and how to make you feel like it was your idea, all those little things that they teach you in sales. But I like that he goes in with his humility and he owns his story. But he wasn't always like that. He had shame. And I thought it was interesting how he wrote this book and he wasn't sure he wanted to share it.
It's always a journey.
Yeah.
Even though he's the CEO now of this company, he's still growing and learning and changing and still not sure he wants to share all of this. Yeah,
and look how long it took him to get into a healthy relationship with someone that he trusted would accept his whole package, his whole everything. You kind of guarded, well, I don't want to tell him this about myself or whatever, but a true loving relationship is one where they accept everything about you. But he didn't fully, I don't think, love and accept everything about himself while he was still feeling the shame of how he was raised and the fact of his name and the fact of his parenting and what his father did for a living, those sorts of things. And it's so easy to do that, and that's why the books are scary. Jimmy and I both written one. Jimmy's has Come Back Stronger. We've talked about it many times. He makes it available free to people. You can just go to the website and download it. But there's so much shame, and then you get it out on paper, and then you read it, and then you realize, why am I feeling ashamed of this? Yeah. I need to be sharing this story and helping other people. So.
That's wonderful.
It's amazing how long it took him to do that. But, the sales thing and the results thing, if he believed what society had been telling him about himself, he wouldn't even try for some of the jobs he went to. But I think he kind of got the feeling that people are more interested in results necessarily than credentials. Not that I'm bashing education at all.
Yes, but he put that fear aside. He said, what's the worst thing that somebody can do? They can say no.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask. Yeah. I'm going to put that fear aside. I'm just going to keep asking. I'm going to keep educating myself.
Yeah.
And if I fail, I fail. I can get back up again.
Right.
I think a lot of people are afraid of that failure.
Yeah.
And so they never reach out and try for that next step.
Yeah, and I can tell you something. Take my word on this. Just ask. A lot of people say yes. They more often say yes than they say no. So thanks for joining us again for another episode. If you know a good Come Back Stronger story, I wish you would email us at comebackstronger@fasigbrooks.com and follow our groups and follow our Facebook page. We'll see you next week.
I just recently had a case where the person didn't purchase uninsured motorist coverage, and he was hit by somebody that didn't have a lot of insurance, and that's the type of coverage that's supposed to help you and cover you if the person that hurts you doesn't have enough insurance. He didn't purchase it himself, but what he did know is that the insurance companies were required to do certain things in order to make sure that they gave notice to the client, or if they didn't do that, they have to give it to the client.
Yeah, give them the opportunity to purchase that insurance.
And my client had a broken femur, a broken hip, broken shoulder, and the insurance company wasn't going to offer it until we challenged them and said, no, you didn't fulfill your requirements. And next thing you know, we found out there was coverage because they didn't fulfill it, and there was $900,000 in coverage that we got.
What layperson would know to do that?
Who knows about uninsured motorist coverage unless someone tells them?